And joining me now is Leighton. He grew up in South Africa, attended Rand Afrikaans University. He's also a former law enforcement officer. Leighton, thank you for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
Give us your perspective once you heard this news that Nelson Mandela died. What did you think?
Well, you know, we've been kind of expecting it for some time, but when I got the call today from you guys to say that he had died and would I come on the air, it was actually quite a shock. I was actually shaking for a few minutes after that.
Really?
It's the end of an era.
Tell us about your life growing up. I mean, as a boy, and I know information was limited to you in South Africa, but did you know, when did you start to learn that the government there, the National Party government, was violent and racist and oppressive?
You know, it's a complicated subject, and when we look back, and when I look back, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media in those days. We basically were guided by what we were told and what we were, led to believe, and that was pretty much what we saw in school. And so, you know, my childhood, I grew up on a big ranch. I came from an affluent background. All my friends were black kids because those were the kids that were on the ranch, and I didn't see any difference. I played with them every day. They were different. You know, there was no difference as such between us then. And it was only really when I became a teenager and a young adult that I started realizing that there were things that were different. You know, they weren't allowed to marry people that were a different color. They weren't allowed to own property, didn't have a vote, etc. And I guess that's when it started kind of setting in as to the fact that it was different.
Tell me about your brother, because he was a pilot for Nelson Mandela, and then they ended up forming a bond, a friendship.
They did. Whenever President Mandela wanted to fly around different places, then he would obviously fly with sometimes with his own aircraft, and sometimes he would fly with the South African Air Force. And my brother was a commander in the Air Force, and he would fly him around. And
there's the picture right there. Which one's your brother?
He's on the second from the right at the back. He was I think he was the captain at that stage, and that was a picture that he actually had with Nelson Mandela and with
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey, when they came out.
And what did he tell you about Nelson Mandela?
He had a great amount of love for Nelson Mandela, both at that time as well as even up till now. You know, he often talks about him. President Mandela had a nickname for him, because he couldn't pronounce our last name, which is Westhays, and he used to call him Ozzy, and so he became famous for the name of Ozzy, and they would always talk, he would ask for Ozzy to come in. There was a story about my brother. He was working in Johannesburg at the time, and he gets a phone call, and the phone call was that he had to drive to Pretoria, which is about an hour's drive from Johannesburg, get in an aircraft, fly the aircraft back to Johannesburg again, and pick up President Mandela to take him somewhere. And it was like, you know, he was like his personal assistant, you know.
It is amazing to me. Bill Clinton said today, he put out a quote, he said, "It is better to have a big heart than a closed mind." And of course, he was talking about Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
As an American, I can't get my head around being imprisoned for nearly 30 years and not coming out bitter.
You know,
how did he do that?
And something that's not publicly known is before he was actually released, and I didn't know this at the time, in actual fact I only found this out subsequently some time after that he was actually brought out of prison and taken around the country by the current president, F.W. de Klerk and Pik Botha, because they were trying to find a way to reintroduce him back into the country and to get this whole thing together. That was their vision of, you know, bringing blacks and whites together and bringing the National Party and the African National Congress, which at that time was an illegal organization.
Sure.
You know, so it was a very complicated thing at the time, and there was a lot of resistance from various people at the time, but it worked out, and if it wasn't for President Mandela, it would never have come out.
Well, your perspective is fascinating, and we'd like more of it. So if you would stick around, and we're going to talk to you again on our 6 p.m. newscast. Leighton, thank you so much.